What I'm about to show you guys is legitimately some of the wildest shit I have ever seen documented in any modern democratic country. That's not hyperbole. This is fucking crazy. This is legitimately some of the most insane anti-democratic shit I've ever seen in my life. I honestly can't believe it. But I think we should talk about it. Because it's really, really, really important if you are left-leaning. Because if you are left-leaning, you may still somehow be under the impression that you are actually capable of advocating for your positions fairly in a democratic environment without being sabotaged from within. But you are wrong, my friends. It's going to be a long night. How members of Labour's senior management team campaigned to lose. What this is a news report that details information pertaining to a collection of leaks that came out very recently from the United Kingdom's Labour Party. Remember Jeremy Corbyn? Jezza, our man? That's the man. Originally, I was given a super secret Dropbox link that had this information inside of it, but unfortunately, it has been deleted since. There are other places where you can get the actual files, but at the moment, I don't have them on hand. All the same, the information that is in this article has been verified. And I'm going to read this article. I know that may seem strange. It's certainly not the most exciting thing, but I think it is truly fucking insane. And I think we need to go over this together. I have a link. Well, we won't be going over the specifics anyway. The product of an extensive internal investigation, the report contained hundreds of pages of evidence, including WhatsApp messages and emails implicating members of the parties, that's the Labour Party, senior management team, the SMT, including the former General Secretary Ian McNicol. The following conversations, which took place from the 13th of January in 2017 to the week after the election result that June, depict a disloyal, dysfunctional culture at the top of the party. One which held Labour's twice-elected leadership, party members, and any MPs they disagreed with in contempt. Far from a few bad apples, the messages exposed systematic and sustained efforts to undermine the leadership by multiple figures in director-level positions. For many, what will make this material all the more appalling is that Labour was less than 2,500 votes away from forming a government in 2017 after winning 40% of the popular vote, the party's best result since 1997. So the incidences which are detailed in this article directly led to the loss of Labour and prevented Jeremy Corbyn from acting as Prime Minister. This is what tipped the balance. Or we can only assume, because this is a preposterous level of undermining going on at the upper level. Below is a conversation that took place on the 13th of January after Tristram Hunt, Labour MP for Stoke Central, announced his resignation, triggering a by-election. Revealed here is how, less than 6 months after Jeremy Corbyn had won the party's leadership for the second time in a row, members of the SMT, remember, that's the senior management team, remained intent on his removal. It offers a glimpse of the hostile and coordinated attacks the party leadership was subjected to from senior unelected members of the party's bureaucracy. So again, senior unelected members. These are not elected officials. These are not Congress people or whatever, parliamentary members. These are unelected higher-ups. Exactly the same thing that us lefties complain about in the DNC. Not elected officials, but all of the big-name fucking campaign strategists, all of the huge donors, all of the higher-level management that influence the way in which the DNC operates. This is their version of that. And now, if I may, Julie Lawrence, then director of the General Secretary's office. I may be jumping the gun here, and JC is a proud and selfish man with a team to match, but if we lose these elections, Stoke and Copland, we could have another leadership election. We should set up at some stage a discrete working group to go over rules, timetable scenarios, and staff servicing the process, just so we're prepared, like Operation Cake. And without me having to go through these voices back and forth, essentially what they're discussing is an opportunity for them to undermine the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and try to force another leadership election, trying to throw him out, even if it means hurting the party. As further described, Here, an executive director, Hennigan, explicitly states he hopes Labour loses both by-elections, while Oldknow and McCall make it clear that the deputy leader of the party at the time, Tom Watson, was involved in plans to replace Corbyn. This is a coup. This is a party. This is higher senior officials of a party conspiring to lose local elections to make it easier for them to implement a coup and replace Jeremy Corbyn as the Labour leader. The subsequent by-elections were a mixed bag, however. Labour kept Stoke Central but lost Copeland, meaning that while weakened, Corbyn remained strong enough to stay on as leader. On the 18th of April, Prime Minister Theresa May called a snap general election. With Labour well behind in the polls, the SMT decided early on to throw cash at Watson's seat of West Bromwich East, which would keep with 58% of the vote that June. Here is them describing their desire to throw cash at the aforementioned Watson's seat. The deputy leader. According to the report, the SMT went so far as to assign significant resources to a secret key seats team in May 2017 without the knowledge of Corbyn or his office. Permanently based in a separate building, Airgun House, and all secret to LOTL, his office, the team worked to protect MPs, including Watson, who were factionally aligned with the SMT, diverting funds away from marginals. So, the higher management team of the Labour Party formed a secret organization where they could divert money and resources towards candidates who aligned with their interests, all of which they kept a secret from Jeremy Corbyn, the head of the Labour Party at the time. By early May, as it became clear that Labour was at least closing the gap on the Tories, though still well behind, senior staff members mocked those working for a Labour victory. Sarah Mullahan, then Parliamentary Labour Party Secretary, the Kitchener whoopin' and cheerin' Jeremy's words to the nation. Shut the front door. They should make the most of it. 28 days and they'll be ashen and in tears. So this is them laughing, crying emojiing the idea of Labour losing. These people who are in the Labour Party. Who run it, as a matter of fact. Rather than idle words, this eagerness to embrace defeat as a means to change leader rather than to actually win the election was reflected in concrete steps being taken. 3 days later, on the 14th of May, then Director of the Governance and Legal Unit, John Stolliday, saved a series of documents outlining procedures, codes of conduct, and staff purdah rules for a Labour leadership election in 2017. This included a timeline under the column labeled Quickest, with the process for a new party leader beginning on the 12th of June 2017 and being announced on the 19th of August. Stolliday, now head of Unison's Member Liaison Unit, having previously been at the People's Vote campaign, would save a separate document titled Electoral College Rule Change less than 2 weeks later. This document proposed to replace Labour's one-member, one-vote system, which had seen Corbyn win the leadership twice, with the Electoral College that existed before 2013. The plan then wasn't simply to change leader, but also the rules by which Corbyn's successor would be chosen. A focus on events after the election result, as opposed to trying to win it, was compounded by senior members of management who appeared to relish imminent defeat. That is reflected in the following messages between Neil Fleming, Regional Director for Greater London, and Patrick Hennigan, Executive Director for Campaigns, Elections and Organisation. Neil Fleming says, "Just seen Nia Griffith's interview. What a bloody hero. She doesn't bullshit and she's just stabbed Corbyn and Thornberry. Yes, she did. Thornberry is awful. She should pay in the reckoning." This dialogue reveals two things. Firstly, the kind of inappropriate and sinister language frequently used by senior staff to talk about the party leader, but also how such enmity extended beyond Corbyn to anyone who is perceived as trying to help him become Prime Minister, in this case, Emily Thornberry, MP. The following day, on the 20th of May, Jeremy Corbyn met a rapturous welcome at Tranmere's Prenton Park. It was where "Oh Jeremy Corbyn" was sung to the tune of the White Stripes' Seven Nation Army, based, for the first time in response to the party rising in the polls and an increasingly popular leader. The response by those at Party HQ was hostile and negative. So, Julie Lawrence posts a Twitter link of Jeremy Corbyn getting a huge fucking crowd. So this is their party leader back in 2017, getting a huge crowd of 20,000 people, an unprecedented wave of populist support. The response to this is, "Oh my god, I think this is what's making me feel ill!" Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Has everyone in the Northwest gone a bit loopy, Anna? Concern for Labour's success only grew. By the 26th of May, as Labour's rise continued, Francis Grove White, the party's international policy officer, and Joe Greening, an international affairs advisor, discussed how a YouGov poll showed Labour on 36% made them feel sick. I actually felt quite sick when I last saw that YouGov poll. Not that I think we'll end up there, or probably anywhere near. And I shall tell you why. It is a peak, and the polling was done after the Manchester attack, so with a bit of luck, this speech will show a clear polling decline, and we shall all be able to point how disgusting they truly are. My fears are that, A, the speech won't go down as badly as it deserves to, thanks to the large groundswell of ill-informed opposition to all Western interventions, and B, they will use that poll to claim they were on course to win, but then Manchester happened. People discussing how it's disgusting to them that their party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, is getting positive reception. Such pessimism regarding Labour's surprise buoyancy in national polling wasn't confined to Greening and Grove White. On the 31st of May, as the election looked increasingly tight, new polls suggested a hung parliament or even a Labour government. God willing. Yet even now, senior members of staff appear to prefer those polls that continue to predict a Conservative victory. Always loved TNS, gold standard, after predicting a Conservative victory. The following day, even Party General Secretary Ian McNull mocked the possibility of Corbyn becoming Prime Minister. I am a Corbyn. That doesn't make any sense. I am a Trot. That makes complete sense. Ich bin mein Prime Minister. I'm getting seriously weirded out by all this PM talk. I don't think I can cope with the idea. The following day, as one poll put Labour at 40%. No, really? Less than a week before polling day, Survation cut the Conservative lead to just 1 point, while another pollster, ORB, had the Tories ahead 9 points. Naturally, Labour's senior team viewed the worst poll as good news. Good old ORB, as the Conservative vote soars ahead of the Labour vote. I would like to stop for just a moment to point out that I have long predicated many of my political beliefs on the belief that the DNC does not actually care about winning, and they would rather lose an election to Trump than win an election to Bernie Sanders. This is literally that happening. It's not a fucking conspiracy anymore. This is literally what fucking happened. The higher-ups of the party conspired to undermine the success of the Labour Party at every possible turn because they didn't want Corbyn to be in office. It's not a fucking conspiracy theory. Before, this is conspiratorial talk. Libs, whatever, Destiny, I don't know. Non-leftists, Oh, you think the DNC is undermining the efforts of the leftists within their community? That's so conspiratorial, dude. It's not their fault everything seems to end up being institutionally biased against leftists. Oh, well, hey, look at this. We may not have any leaks from the DNC, but here's the fucking Labour Party with clear and a bit obvious evidence that hugely powerful figures within the Labour Party preferred losing to Conservatives than they liked the idea of these fucking Blairites. These fucking Blairites. Now, does this prove the DNC is doing the same? No, it doesn't. That's not how it works. Does it indicate that this is highly plausible? Oh yeah, it fucking does. These are Blairites. These are neoliberals that attach themselves to Blair after his victory early on. When was it? 2000? When was the year that Blair won? Blair was a Labour Party member, but he was a comparatively conservative one. He wasn't a conservative, but he wasn't a proper leftist, the thing you'd expect. 1997? Thank you. Yeah, I knew it wasn't 2000. I knew it wasn't off of the every 4 years thing we've got. The same day, when discussing the well-attended final rally of the campaign in the Union Chapel in Islington, staff joked about violence being used against Labour MPs, members, and supporters. We got very close to the police stopping the event. There are 4 police SWATs here. Media omitted. Oh my god, blimey. Truncheons out, lads. Let's knock some trots. Water cannons, please. So this is people in the higher up of the Labour Party joking about how they want... So this was omitted. I don't know what's in here. But the thing that wasn't omitted... Truncheons out, lad, let's knock some trots. Sort of a pejorative they're using here for Corbyn supporters. Can you imagine if this came out? Can you imagine if this came out from the DNC? if like fucking high ups in the DNC had like WhatsApp messages or texts between them where they joke about going to like Bernie Sanders rallies and having the police truncheon all the Bernie Sanders supporters, there would be riots in our fucking streets. This is insane. This validates everything that we've been saying about the inefficaciousness of liberal government and their unwillingness to allow lefties to get a proper shot at electoral victory. On polling day, as party staff, MPs, members, and supporters were getting the vote out across the country, rather than focusing on doing like dice, senior staff were joking about the following day's drinking session. This is just them being European, nothing to see here. Humor would soon turn to sadness, though. When the exit poll came in at 10 p.m., predicting a hung parliament, much of the senior staff at Southside, Labour's headquarters, were in a state of shock with the director of the General Secretary's office offering a safe space in Ian McNoll's office. And this is... I've read it all. This is literally just a bunch of old, wealthy, powerful people freaking out that there's a slight possibility their party might win. That's what they're doing. You can read it yourself if you want. There's only so much Brit accent I can do in a single stream, okay? It's going to be a long night, was the reaction to the party's general secretary after Labour had deprived the Tories of a governing majority and seen their highest share of the popular vote in 20 years, while an outrageous comment, given McNoll's elevated status within the party, is perhaps outdone by Julie Lawrence, former director of the general secretary's office, who appears to have actively feared Labour entering government. Meanwhile, Emily Oldknow, now assistant general secretary at Unison, apparently saw a silver lining, saying, "At least we have loads of money now." The following morning, as the scale of Labour's push across the country became clear, senior staff continued to express outright dismay in addition to making concerning comments about our loses, which implies the SMT had a list of candidates it agreed to support above all others. Our losses. What were our losses again? Winnick, Mail, Flello, and Engel. Was there another I've missed? So these are higher ups in the Labour Party actively standing behind and supporting non-Labour MPs. In given districts, so their party can be hamstrung. And it goes on. Less than a year later, with Corbyn's leadership firmly established, Ian McNoll was replaced as party general secretary by Jenny Formby, who took that role that April. Within a few months, figures like Oldknow, Stolliday, and Hennigan would leave, while Fleming announced his departure in March alongside McNoll staffers like Tracy Allen and Julie Lawrence. Unsurprisingly, this was briefed to Kevin Schofield, a mouthpiece for the party's right, as an exodus. Ironically, Stolliday claimed Labour must decide whether it wants to be a party of protest or government on his departure, although given his conduct less than a year earlier, that would appear to be a more pertinent question for him. Damn! That's an interesting question. Do you want to be a party of protest or government as you're literally trying to sabotage your own electoral chances? These revelations should end any debate around whether Labour's senior management team, including McNoll, were serious about a Labour government in 2017. To the contrary, what this stunning cache of documents reveals is how McNoll, and a tight unelected circle around him, have made every effort to undermine and denigrate that year's election campaign, frequently stating how they hoped it would fail while simultaneously planning to replace Jeremy Corbyn from as early as January. This is just what was leaked. This is just a fraction of all of the internal communication that goes on amidst these party heads. What else do you think they've been doing? What else do you think goes on in other left-leaning political parties that are seeing a sudden upsurge in leftist populism, like with the DNC? Do you really think, given the fact that everything I've ever said happens has now been proven to have happened? Is that unlikely? Oh, hey. Whoops. Turns out that a ton of the accusations about Corbyn and the Labour Party being anti-Semitic were deliberately fueled and instigated by Labour Party officials who didn't want Corbyn to win the election. Oops. An extensive internal investigation into the way Labor handled anti-Semitism complaints will not be submitted to the Equality and Human Rights. Wait, is this the article that I was thinking of, or is this a different one? The investigation claims to have found no evidence of anti-Semitism complaints being treated differently to any other forms of complaint or of former or current staff being motivated by anti-Semitic intent. That's interesting. This was a huge talking point during the fucking election back in 2019, that Labor was super anti-Semitic and they all hate Jews or whatever. And then Boris Johnson, the person who believed Jews secretly control the world, who have called them like money grubbers, won. Huh. I don't know if this is the exact document I was looking at, but evidence seems to indicate. Oh, as well as 10,000 separate emails, the dossier uncovers thousands of private WhatsApp communications between former senior party officials and singles out for criticism some who gave whistleblower evidence to last year's highly critical BBC Panorama investigation on anti-Semitism within Labour. Ooh, interesting. So it looks like some of the people who were set on deplatforming Jeremy Corbyn and destroying the Labour Party's chances of success were also the ones supplying information that contributed to accusations of anti-Semitism that ended up being completely disingenuous, that a report found were completely unfounded. Interesting. So the senior officials, who are completely unelected, by the way, of the Labour Party are willing to actively back the other side, hoard resources for their private use, support non-Labour candidates in tight MP elections to deprive Corbyn of support, actively spread disinformation about rumors of anti-Semitism within the party to facilitate public discourse against it, and then leave citing that it was in fact Jeremy Corbyn and his Labour Party who weren't interested in governing. Oops. Oops. There's a reason why leftists often say that it's impossible to enact socialism through electoralism. And it's not because the people don't want it. It's because every facet of liberal democracy is designed and refined to prevent people like Bernie Sanders or Jeremy Corbyn from reaching the top. Does that mean they're perfect conspiratorial and that all the Labour Party members are gods who have complete control over everything that takes place? No, of course not. But goddamn if they can't swing an election. And they did, because in 2017, the Labour Party lost by 2,500 votes. What do you think might have happened if they hadn't hoarded a bunch of resources themselves or supported other candidates or disseminated misinformation about the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn? Do you think that might have been enough to get a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of the population over onto the Labour Party side? I think so. It's impossible for me to know, of course, but they threw that election as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if the DNC did the same thing with Bernie Sanders. I am very much of the opinion that institutions exist to protect themselves, in large part, and that any institution that's going to be threatened by the policies of somebody like Bernie Sanders is probably going to defend itself against that possibility. So there is a level of intrinsic bias in the way the DNC handles things. Was it this level of bias? Was it DNC officials talking about how they were praying that they lose as an alternative to allowing a socialist in power? I don't know. I don't know. But I do know this. From now on, anytime anyone sneers at you about how the reason why socialism hasn't taken root in America or the UK or whatever else is because the people don't want it, kindly remind them, that's not the only reason. That's not the only reason. There are institutional forces preventing leftists from reaching higher government. And to say that the inability for leftists to win elections in the US, UK, whatever, is a product entirely of their unpopularity is every bit as untrue and disingenuous as arguing that the only reason black people don't on average have the same income as white people is because they don't try as hard, that it must just be some personal failing. The blith and obvious dismissal of institutional biases is a reinforcement of hierarchy. And as a good old-fashioned egalitarian, I think that's pretty fucked up.